You'd think you'd see it coming. That's the lie. That's the one piece of self-confidence almost everyone is walking around with, completely unearned. You think if a narcissist ever got close to you, some internal alarm would go off. You think your intelligence would protect you. Your self-awareness would protect you. The fact that you've read a few articles, watched a few videos, learned the vocabulary, love bombing, gaslighting, narcissistic supply. You think knowing the words means you're immune to the mechanism. You are not. Because the people who get pulled apart by a narcissist are rarely the naive ones. They're usually the sharp ones, the empathetic ones, the ones who pride themselves on reading people well. That pride is exactly what gets used against you. A narcissist doesn't need you to be stupid. They need you to be confident in your own perceptiveness, because confidence is slower to question itself than doubt is. Here's the part nobody hands you directly. The narcissist isn't actually the most dangerous variable in this story. You are. Specifically, the part of you that was built long before you ever met them to mistake intensity for intimacy and inconsistency for chemistry. That part of you was installed early by people who loved you in a way that came and went. And a narcissist doesn't create that wiring, they just find it. They run a diagnostic on you in the first few weeks, whether they're conscious of it or not, and they locate the exact place where your nervous system confuses anxiety with attraction. Then they live there. So this isn't going to be a video where I tell you how to spot a narcissist from across the room. You'll forget that checklist by next week anyway. This is going to be a video about the part of your own mind that's been quietly auditioning for this role your entire life, and how to permanently shut down the casting call. Sit with that for a second before you decide whether to keep watching, because this gets uncomfortable fast. If you've been on the internet for more than 10 minutes, you've absorbed the cultural definition of a narcissist: selfish, arrogant, obsessed with their own reflection. That definition is almost decorative. It tells you nothing about the actual mechanism, and mechanism is the only thing that matters if you want to stop being a recurring character in this pattern. A narcissist isn't someone who loves themselves too much. That's the opposite of what's actually happening internally. A narcissist is someone whose authentic self got buried so early and so thoroughly that what you're interacting with isn't a person, it's a performance system built entirely out of other people's reactions. There is no stable internal I running the show. There's only a constant frantic polling of the room. Am I impressive right now? Am I in control right now? Am I being admired right now? When the polling comes back negative, something underneath collapses, and that collapse gets defended against instantly, automatically, with rage, with blame, with disappearing, with rewriting history in real time, so they're never the one who did anything wrong. That's the part that should actually scare you, not the arrogance, the absence underneath it. You're not dealing with someone who's too full of themselves. You're dealing with someone who's almost entirely empty where a self should be, wearing a very convincing costume stitched together from your applause. And here's the curiosity gap I'm going to leave open, because you need to sit with the discomfort of it before I close it. The reason you keep ending up across the table from this exact architecture of person, in friendship after friendship, relationship after relationship, job after job, has almost nothing to do with bad luck. It has to do with a specific psychological transaction you learned to make before you could even speak in full sentences. I'm going to come back to that. Hold the thought. Let's talk about the hook first, because the hook is where the real damage gets done, and almost nobody understands how mechanically precise it is. It starts with idealization. You get seen, fully, intensely, in a way that almost nobody has ever seen you before. Every story you tell lands like it's the most fascinating thing they've ever heard. Every flaw you confess gets reframed as a strength. This isn't romance, this is reconnaissance. They are mapping exactly which compliments make your pupils dilate, which insecurities make your shoulders drop, which validations make you lean in closer. And your brain, which runs almost entirely on a reward prediction system, logs every one of those hits as data. This person equals safety. This person equals being finally understood.
Then, without ever announcing it, the rate of reward starts changing. not stopping, changing. Sometimes you get the full intensity back, sometimes you get cold distance, or a flicker of contempt, or a comment that quietly implies you're too much, too sensitive, too needy. And this is the part your conscious mind will never catch in real time, because it's not happening at the level of conscious mind. Unpredictable reward is the single most addictive pattern a nervous system can be exposed to. Not consistent reward, unpredictable reward. It's the exact mechanism behind a slot machine, behind a phone notification, behind a relationship you can't walk away from even though you can list out loud every reason you should. Your brain isn't chasing the good moments anymore. It's chasing the unpredictability itself, because uncertainty triggers a sharper dopamine response than certainty ever could. You start performing better, trying harder, shrinking faster, all in pursuit of a version of them that shows up less and less, and that scarcity is precisely what's training you to stay. This is the loop almost nobody names correctly. Idealize, destabilize, withhold, reward, repeat. Each cycle tightens the leash a little more, and each cycle convinces you a little more deeply that the inconsistency is somehow your fault, that if you were just easier, calmer, less demanding, the version of them from week 1 would come back permanently. It won't. That version was never real. It was bait, calibrated specifically to your nervous system's weak points. Now here's where I close the gap I opened earlier, the one about why this keeps happening to you specifically. Children raised in homes where love was conditional, inconsistent, or earned by performance don't grow up believing love is supposed to feel calm. They grow up believing love is supposed to feel like effort, like proving something, like winning back someone's attention that keeps drifting away and then returning. If you were the kid who had to read a parent's mood the second you walked into a room, who learned to perform cheerfulness to keep the peace, who got affection in bursts tied to achievement or good behavior rather than just for existing, your definition of intimacy got permanently rewired around instability. Calm, available, consistent people don't register as safe to that wiring. They register as boring. Your nervous system was trained on a specific frequency, and a narcissist broadcasts exactly on that frequency, because chaos is the only language that part of you was ever taught to recognize as love. This is the uncomfortable diagnosis. You're not unlucky. You're fluent in a language almost nobody else can speak, and narcissists are some of the only people who speak it back to you instantly. Before I give you the actual exit protocol, I need you to do something, because this only works if you stop being a passive audience for your own psychology. Subscribe, because what I'm about to walk you through is the start of a deeper deprogramming series, not a one-off video. And before you keep watching, drop a comment naming the specific pattern this is exposing in you. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a friend group, maybe it's a parent you're still trying to win over at 35 years old. Name it publicly to yourself. Articulating the pattern in words is the first measurable step in disrupting it, because vague discomfort doesn't change behavior. Precise language does. Now the exit, not the emotional pep talk version, the tactical version. The first move is recognizing that you cannot outlove, out-explain, or outperform a narcissist, suddenly developing object permanence for your feelings. They are not withholding affection as a test you can pass. They are incapable of sustained attunement to anyone outside themselves for longer than it serves the performance. Once you accept that as architecture rather than as a personal failure on your part, the entire dynamic stops being a puzzle to solve and starts being a system to exit. The second move is interrupting the reward prediction loop directly, not emotionally. Every time you catch yourself replaying a good moment with this person to justify staying through a bad one, write the full sequence down, not the highlight, the whole cycle in order. What led to the good moment? What came right before it? What you had to do or become to get it? Patterns lose their hypnotic power the second they're forced into linear, written language instead of floating around as emotional fog. This is the single most effective tool for breaking intermittent reinforcement because it forces the analytical part of your brain back online, the same part that gets quietly sedated every time you're inside the loop. The third move is rebuilding your tolerance for boredom in relationships, because right now, calm reads as red flag and chaos reads as chemistry, and that has to be retrained on purpose. Deliberately spend time around people who are consistent, steady, low drama, and notice the urge to label them as uninteresting. That urge is not your taste, that urge is your conditioning talking. Sit in the discomfort of being treated well without earning it through performance. That discomfort is the actual work.
The fourth move is the one almost nobody wants to hear, which is distance, structural, and not just emotional. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system loop while you're still inside the room generating the stimulus. Reduce contact to the legal or logistical minimum if you can't eliminate it entirely. Every interaction you allow is another data point your brain logs as evidence that the loop is still live, still possibly winnable. What you're walking away with today isn't a list of red flags to spot in other people. It's a map of the exact mechanism inside you that made you recruitable in the first place. And recruitable people can become unrecruitable. That's not a personality trait, that's a setting, and settings can be changed by someone who finally understands what they're actually adjusting. You didn't end up here because you're broken. You ended up here because you were trained, early and thoroughly, by people who probably never meant to do it, to mistake unpredictability for love. Now you know the training. Now the training has a name. And the moment something has a name, it stops running you silently in the background and starts being something you can finally, deliberately turn off.